Hello, YouTube, and actually, my history class as well. My group decided to do for history, in the interwar years, how immigrants and other minorities were treated, and I'm gonna make the beginning pretty quick, cause in there I've got fire going, and that may burn down the whole thing. So basically, immigrants, they were not treated well. Anyone who was different was not known well or treated well. And I use myself as an analogy because I look quite different to the NPC villagers in this game. And I put a sign there for what the shopkeeper would be saying. He said, "Get out here, first the derogatory term that starts with N for a boss person, and now you." Yeah, in that time period, that's what people called black people, right? There was, no, if not very light racism laws, and this guy over here is saying, "You aren't welcome here either, no money to spend," and, sorry about that, so I'm being a Chinese person, and this was how they would be treated. Maybe not exactly like this, but they would be made fun of. Didn't you hear? How about I put it into your language? Sing, chong, sing, clang, chop, chop, I don't know. Just like racial stereotypes that are actually quite offensive. And I just put laughter in the background because everyone's laughing because it's so funny. So this was supposed to be a restaurant. Hiring in order from most to least likely, British and Americans. Those were the most likely in getting a job. And black people and Asians actually are banned. Yeah, Asians and black people were treated the worst. It would be unacceptable. Sorry, I set a fireplace in here and it kind of, just burned the wall down. That was not the idea of the architecture of the 1920s. It was just, I wanted to build something and I wanted to have a nice fireplace. And I failed. Yeah. So I'm going to go along here. I am getting a very low frame rate, as you can see. Oh, it's not that bad. But yeah. This was intended to be a system in which some mobs come after me, but we're going to ignore that. And again, just racial nicknames. Sorry, I'm just getting a very low frame rate, and it's kind of hard to play this game like that. This placement of the blacksmith shop was not intentional, and typically there's a person on my steps, as if guarding it and about to treat me like crap. I just put Jory. I had to put a name. And this is my house, which is pretty much a dirt floor, and literally in Minecraft as big as you need it. You don't need it to be any bigger, but people do like houses bigger, like, that guy already robbed me. No, but that's a church. That's supposed to be a church. That's supposed to be a library. Those are supposed to be bigger houses, right? So everyone is being treated fine but me, and the only reason is because I look different. And this is just an analogy. But yeah. They were treated horribly, really. There's not much more you can say. Especially during the Great Depression. The Chinese had a head tax of, I'm not sure how much, and I don't want to say how much, but it was, if I'm correct, about a year's salary, which is pretty big. So they had to work for a year, use all that money to come to Canada, in which they thought they'd have a better life. And unfortunately, that did not happen for some people. Some people it did work out, and a lot it didn't. Just because everyone was so racist, right? So I'm just gonna, stare at the fire. Yeah, I can stare at the fire while I just talk a bit about that. Now, if you're wondering why, they didn't just find out that people were treated badly. It's not like the world today. In the world today, we have Google. We can easily send a message to somebody, even through paper. We can easily send a message, cheap, to somebody to find out what life is like. They kind of had a shot in the dark. They didn't have Google. Oh no Google. The apocalypse. Yeah. They didn't have Google. They didn't have letters, right? Or they had letters, but you're just gonna send a letter to a random person in Canada if you're Chinese. I'm using Chinese a lot because all Asians were discriminated against the most. But you're Chinese. You can't just send a letter to a random Canadian and hope they write back. I'm sure some people tried that, but I'm fairly certain it did not work. It was just a shot in the dark, last-ditch attempt for a better life, and it didn't work. They were discriminated against. They had to pay that head tax. Because, immigrants and minorities were treated horribly in the 1920s. It was not fair. And that is my whole presentation. There really isn't too much to say about the whole thing. And I'm repeating myself a lot by saying, they were treated badly. Actually, there is a lot of acceptance now and then. There was a lot of changes. Like, people would start to accept each other, just kind of walking around here. I just decided to fly in the game. But people they weren't treated well. I don't know what else to say, really. What was I just talking about? So that was my analogy using villagers as comparison to me. You can see they look a lot different, and yeah. That is how I would be treated. And you know what? If you could come to this country, you were probably rich in your own country. And a lot of people were hated for having money in the Great Depression, in the interwar years. People who didn't have money hated people who did have money. So if people did have money and decided to go for the shot in the dark in Canada, they would start calling them names, and they would call them stupid for doing that. They would say, I can't believe you left a rich life in China, just using myself as a Chinese person. You leave your life in China, where you're rich, and you come to this crappy life. Why would you do that? Well, they didn't know, for one. They couldn't find out. They thought they were getting a better life, and they really weren't. Yeah. If you had lots of money, you were hated. Why would you do this? They would say, stay in your own town. I couldn't find good ethnic slurs, as they're called, I guess, for Chinese people in the 1920s, and I probably would have just written them on a sign or something in the game. But this is my creative way of explaining basically how immigrants and minorities were treated, which was crappy. Yeah. Actually, immigration slowed down by a lot. Also, so you had to have a lot of money to come into the country. If you were there